Welcome back to Bay Sunday. I'm Elizabeth Cook, filling in for Frank Malakote. He's a man that lives up to his name, Frank. Barney Frank, whether it's speaking out against his very own party or speaking his mind or speaking for the minority as a first openly gay congressman, Barney Frank is not one to mince words. We are honored to have this former U.S. representative from Massachusetts with us today. Please welcome Barney Frank. And you have a new book titled Frank. Very appropriate. And thank you for joining us.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
As of right now, we are towards the end of March, and we're talking about the Indiana Religious Freedom Act, along with other legislation, including one in Texas that could strip salaries and pensions from clerks who issue same-sex marriage licenses, not to mention right here in California, the Sodomite Suppression Act. Are you surprised that in this day and age and all the work that you've done, that this type of legislation we're still talking about this?
Well, actually, I've been pleasantly surprised by the reaction. I mean, let's put aside the Sodomy Suppression Act. That's an offshoot of what, look, you people in California are entitled to your own rules. The way that process works, it seems to me it ought to be called the Individual Lunatic Freedom Act, and no one thinks that's going to go anywhere. My first reaction when I heard about a sodomy suppression title was that it might be a cheap porn flick. I don't think it's serious. It was obviously not serious. The Indiana thing, though, I take it, Frank, as validation of one of the themes of the book. Now, it's the end of March, as you say. We don't know what it'll be like a month later when people hear this, but it seems likely that it will have been substantially cut back. And I say in the book that one of my themes of my life was I started out in 1954 feeling I could never be successful in politics because being gay was so unpopular when I'm a kid. As I progress, being gay becomes more popular than being a congressman. And I talk about the progress. But even with that, I was surprised at how overwhelming the negative response has been to what they've done in Indiana, including from from the Cummins Diesel and Eli Lilly. It does look like what's happened in Indiana with the mainstream business community speaking out is they're basically saying we are through with this kind of prejudice. So something that started out as a bad thing, I think it's turned out to be something very encouraging.
Take me back to that moment in the mid to late 80s when you decided to come out as gay, knowing very well it could affect your relationships on Capitol Hill and your political future. What was kind of going through your mind?
That I couldn't live with the kind of denial I was imposing on myself. Some people have said over time, well, you know, if you have a great career, that can substitute for your private life. Well, my career was doing well, but that made it worse. In fact, I felt this great irony. I was one of the leaders in the country in fighting for LGBT rights. I filed the first legislation to do that in 1972 in Massachusetts in the legislature. I was a leader in the U.S. House. And I had to say, you know, this is a little crazy. I'm fighting very hard to get these rights for people and then personally denying myself the right to do them. And look, we all have emotional and physical needs that have to be satisfied. And denying myself wasn't working. It was making me behave a little irresponsibly. And you're right, I didn't know what it would mean to my re-election. I thought I'd be okay, but I couldn't be sure. Many of my liberal colleagues thought it would hurt me in my standing in the House and urged me, please don't do it. That turned out to be wrong, but I didn't do it because I knew it would be wrong. I did it because personally I couldn't live any other way, and if it cost me my career, that was a price I would have had to pay.
Wow. Well, you've been very critical of President Obama over the years, especially over Obamacare. What's your relationship with him?
Oh, no, I have not. I in fact, voted for Obamacare, and I did think it would have been better to have led with financial reform, which was a more popular thing before moving to the health care. And I was disappointed with the rollout of the exchanges. I think that hurt. But no, in general, I think the president's entitled to great credit for the most significant expansion of social policy in that area since 1965 with Medicare.
Do you think the future of it is, though, at risk with the Republican-controlled Congress?
No question. This 2016 election is going to put several things at risk. Do we or don't we as a nation continue to try to deal with climate change? If the Republicans win, the answer is no. Do we maintain financial reform? If the Republicans win, the structure we put in place, helped by people in the Bush administration, to restrain irresponsible actions in the financial community will go out the window. Similarly with regard to health care. You will see more Supreme Court justices appointed. Let me say this. I believe the current Supreme Court is going to vote 5-4 to call for same-sex marriage everywhere. But I don't rule out if a Republican president is elected who will be on record as opposed to same-sex marriage, that another Supreme Court justice might reverse that.
Right. Speaking of the election, in just a couple of years, She hasn't announced it yet, but is the Democratic spot on that ticket, is that Hillary's to lose?
Yes, and I think it is Hillary Clinton's. People say, well, she inherited it. No, she is the favorite of the overwhelming majority of Democrats who will participate in the nominating process, and it's on that basis that I think she's going to win. And in fact, if you look at her record over time, she represents a broad consensus where the Democrats are on the issues. We're in a good position this year compared to maybe some previous years. We are not split the way the Republicans are on immigration, on education, on a whole range of issues. There are some differences. I'm on the wing of the party that wants to really cut back on military interventions in various places. But on the whole, we're pretty well united, and she represents that consensus.
All right. Congressman Frank, thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate
His book is Frank. You can find it online and in bookstores now. We'll be right back with more Bay Sunday after this break.